I think it's important to record things down, and I will be recording as much of the process for this mod as possible. I'm a big fan of Hearts of Iron 4, and I will be making a Hearts of Iron 4 mod, as quite a few people who play the game, I guess, tend to do so. I have a concept that I think is a little interesting, although we always hear this from everyone. This is Disappearance of the Dictators, where I can describe the concept to you in just 20 words. As the clock ticks to 1936 for a new year, every world leader of every country vanishes without a trace. This is a little more different than most other Hearts of Iron 4 mods, where there's a lot of analysis on how the world looks after the point of divergence, whether that is Napoleon wins some of his wars, World War I goes a different way, the American Civil War goes one way. What if this king was in charge rather than this one? What if this person won an election instead of this person? This mod is similar to the base game, where you are the point of divergence. You start as soon as everything happens, as everything is ready to change. Everything prior to January 1st, 1936 is historical up to that point. It's your choice to make it wacky. So, who vanishes and who doesn't? Because this is a very important question to have answered. Now, I've defined this as the person with the most actual power on January 1st, 1936, and this is usually the head of government or the head of state. Now, I do have a spreadsheet of all the people who I've outlined who do vanish and who don't. There are a few exceptions, very rare exceptions to this case here, but it is often the head of government or the head of state. And so we'll play a bit of a game of who has more power in Japan in 1936. Is it the Prime Minister or the Emperor? Now, it's actually the Prime Minister. We like to think of Hirohito as sort of the powerhouse and the person making all the choices for all of Japan during the Second Sino-Japanese War and for World War II that he was involved in. For the most part, it was the government rather than the man himself. So who replaces the Prime Minister? It's the deputy, isn't it? But that position was not established until after the war. So, we need to find who replaces him. It's actually this guy here. He's the Minister of Home Affairs, Fumio Goto. He actually also was the acting Prime Minister after Okada. So I've kind of cheated and put him in charge a little earlier, about 3 months earlier. Also, for the most part, any Minister of the Interior is a good deputy if there isn't one. For France, let's play the game again. Who has more power in France, the Prime Minister or the President? Now, I've pulled a quick one on you. It is actually the President, the head of state this time. France has a system where the head of state is more foreign affairs, while the head of government is more internal affairs, but the one who actually holds more power is the president. So we replace him with the vice president, the president of the Senate. Every country is like this. Every country has a very different line of succession. In fact, the easiest one to understand are monarchies. If the king is dead, his son is in charge. But for democracies, some weird reason, it's very complicated. And for the 93 countries that I have chosen to put into this game, or work on in this game, it has been a mission to find who is next. So, what are the countries of 1936? So, here's what the countries of nothing to talk about. You can pause the screen right now and find your favorite, and if it isn't, then we're going to talk about it. So, let's start. The Western colonies, this is just the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Belgium's colonies are around the world that are meaningful to some degree. I will be including all of them. I've been on the fence about including the Belgian Congo, but I have found a successor, which was the thing that was mostly holding me back. And all of these games are referenced by Wikipedia as sovereign countries in 1936. So, yeah, they're all sovereign enough. They're already in Hearts of Iron 4. I'll include and expand on it with my own lore. For the Chinese warlords and Japanese puppets of Asia, a few of these are sovereign according to the Wikipedia article I've been referencing. Most of them are already in the game, and I would like to propose to remove one of them that already exists in the game. So, I do want to fracture China a little bit more, just because there are some regions that are a little more in control of some of the warlords than the central government, I believe. And having, I guess, the tiny more countries that do exist will allow me to have avenues for more storytelling, perhaps. If this doesn't feel right, then perhaps an update will change it. But for the most part, yeah, I'd like to add, I guess, 2 more Chinese warlord states. Now, the one that I am removing is Minjiang. It actually does not exist until May. So, about 5 months into the game. So Minjiang does not actually exist. That territory is it's under the jurisdiction of Japan, but for convenience, I'm going to put it under Manchukos, and we'll see what happens in a few months within the game. I'm also adding East Hebei, which doesn't exist in the game, but is sovereign according to the Wikipedia page. It's unrecognized, but it's also a Japanese puppet, and could have some fun there. For micronations, yeah, they're all sovereign, but none of them exist in Hearts of Iron 4. Technically Danzig does, but as a releasable-ish. I think Danzig is the only interesting one out of the others listed as well. It's a little hard to, I guess, make a city-state interesting, and so we'll do it one at a time, perhaps. But Danzig is going to be a sovereign nation, and the other 5 are not. So British Protectorates and Asua. These are sort of just the other category. Egypt's not in the game, but it is sovereign, so I'm going to include it. Bhutan is, well, it's in the game already, but it's interesting that it's independent and protected by the United Kingdom. Its status, from my understanding, is a little unique. It stays in the game. Newfoundland is independent, but de facto run by the United Kingdom, and this is mostly because they abolished their right to self-governance like 2 years before the game starts, not including them, it's British territory. Sikkim is a region of India that is a kingdom that is sovereign, and it's sort of under the same situation as Bhutan. I'm including it in the game. Oman is kind of in the same position as Newfoundland, but it still has self-governance. And Asuya, I'm adding, but unfortunately, it's probably not going to have any meaningful content. It doesn't have any meaningful content in base game anyway, but it's really hard to make it, I guess, playable when there's almost no information outside of the only head of states that existed in that country. So it's not really, I can't really find enough politicians to justify a story or gameplay here. So it's included in the game, but it's not going to last longer than 4 months. So, what nations should we focus on first? And when I ask this, I'm not actually talking about nations, right? We are talking about a war simulating game. And so, rather than thinking about, I guess, what nations to focus on, why don't we think about the wars to focus on? Because ultimately, this game is about large-scale combat. So there's really just 2 major wars that need to be, I guess, focused on and resolved throughout the game. World War II, which just features France, Germany, Italy, United States, United Kingdom, and the USSR. Also, Japan's a part of that as well, but I've put them in the Chinese Civil War, as the Sino-Japanese War is, I guess, that front of World War II anyway. And so, ideally, the countries I do want to focus on are the major powers and the warlord states of China. And then we start to focus on the minor powers outside of that. So, principles of play. So I need to have a vision of what this mod is, and there needs to be a clear vision for people playing it. They don't need to necessarily, I guess, see these videos, but it is good that what is said in these videos do flow throughout. With war, players must be involved in meaningful wars, and I've sort of defined 4 types of conflicts that do exist that are kind of wars. Local fighting, which is sort of a war involving yourself, which is either a war through decisions or civil war. A regional conflict is like two minor powers fighting, an international incident is a major power and a minor power fighting each other. And World War II is major powers fighting each other. That's the easiest way to define these wars, and that's what I'm going to be defining them. So not only should there be not a single pointless war within this game, but the players should be able to support wars that the nation they are playing benefit the most from. Mechanics, and so a player must always have mechanics to play with. I want the player to not be bored while they wait for the next war or while they try to avoid it. They should have something to do, let this be domestic decisions or international events. These are sort of things where the decisions themselves either affect your country solely or it's you and another country sort of working together or bidding for something. There should obviously be decisions within war as well, so that players don't just feel as though moving the troops to the right spots win the war. There should be decisions and mechanics to get your nation involved more in the war, or how to destabilize the enemy. And I don't really want there to be global mechanics that are generic. I don't want a decision or an event, mostly a decision really, or mechanic that every country can do. I want it to feel as though the country you're playing as has its set of strengths, weaknesses, and choices to make, and you play by, I guess, the rules you have chosen. So there should be enough for the player to do so that they have fun without going to war, while not removing the desire of ever wanting to fight in the first place. So with story paths as well, a nation must have multiple unique paths. I don't just want there to be, the communist path, the fascist path, and the democracy path, and alternates to these. I want all of these paths to feel unique and satisfying. So there shouldn't be single path countries. So not even with the Chinese warlords. If you're playing a country, you have at least you have at least two directions to go in. With minor powers initially, I want them to have limited paths until major powers have all of theirs. And for major powers, I want them to have the diversity to go in all directions. Mostly because major powers are the ones that are going to be involved in the most amount of stuff, so they should be able to make the most out of that. And I don't want to just limit myself to finding different people to represent an ideology. If one dude can represent many ideologies, then they should be someone with many faces. And so even a single leader, I guess, can be unique, or at least I'll try my best to make that so. Alternate history is nothing without exploring the what-if of the world. So every nation must have the chance to replace their leader and change their ideology. So, on the topic of ideologies, why don't we talk about it? Now, this is a very old draft image that I drew on the first idea that I had of this. It involves 10 ideologies, and I can't exactly remember what each circle represented. But you can kind of see that with democratic socialism, libertarian socialism, and authoritarian socialism, that's like the left communist path. Ultranationalism, fascism, and authoritarian conservatism, that's the nationalist kind of like side. And then, of course, progressivism, democratic conservatism, and liberalism, that's the democracy kind of path, with autocratism as the catch-all that don't quite apply, the non-political authoritarian, the non-democratic realpolitik kind of path, the cult of personalities, without a clear ideological fever. I think these 10 ideologies roughly capture most ideologies within the 1930s and 40s, or at least I'm going to try and fit this model onto that world. It also features purple and green, and I'm not sure if y'all are fans of Kaiserreich and TNO, but those are some funny colors at the moment, or have been funny colors. But this is likely the ideologies that I will be working with. So me as making a mod, I'll need to talk a few things about myself. So, my skills are, I don't know how to mod maps. I can only really make portraits, but not really national spirits or focus icons. I don't really have any coding experience, and I'm an experienced and confident writer, which kind of puts my position as I'll need a lot of work behind, to get things started. Now, I am pretty much going to team of one this for as long as possible, so I will need to utilize map modding tools for when it's appropriate. Actually get the resources available for portraits and icons, learn how to code and steal other people's, and I don't need to improve my writing. I think I'm allowed to have ego on the things that I have written in the past 10 years. And certainly you'll be able to see, I guess, that flourish when we get there. So I will need to, I guess, steal a bit of content. I think Ludwig's mode of yoink and twist is very appropriate here, and I will be utilizing that to the best of my ability. So, we went back. So the plan. So the plan. I've told you the pitch. I have told you what I want. Sort of walked you through some steps and told you about myself. So what is the plan? So by next week, I want to try and get these things done. I want to include the new ideologies into a system that actually works. I want to add and remove the listed nations that I talked about before. Every leader replaced with their second in command. And I want to strip the game down to remove all base game content, really. I want to be able to have a canvas by next week where I can start to focus on what it is this game or this mod is about. So, ideally, all 4 of this gets done within the next 7 days. So, regardless of progress, it's best to record what gets done and what doesn't. I intend to have everything meaningful spoken about each and every week until the project is ready to be released. So, we might make mistakes, but we do make other things too. That's a quote from Michael Joseph Savage, Prime Minister of New Zealand in 1936. Sadly, I'll be removing him as per the gimmick of this mod. But if you are interested, I guess, in keeping up with progress here, you can certainly keep track on some of the social medias that I have, and including the YouTube here. So I hope this was a reasonable pitch enough to keep people engaged. I'll see you next week.